then again, those negative messages, because what I would say is the civilian sector has just as much negativity, if not more. And I would say, if not more. Why? Because our military community is less than 1% of our nation. So if you're going to pick on us, I'm going to come back at you full throttle and look at your own organization and put it into question. We are the most diverse workforce on the planet. And if I had an issue and something happened, I did have someone that I could go to.
Yeah. No matter how hard life is, we got a Charlie Mike. Yeah. Let's go.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Charlie Mike, the podcast. As always, I'm your host, Raul, and your co-host, William.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Charlie Mike, the podcast, coming to you from the Pearland Podcast Studio. It has a certain ring to it, you know?
Man, I love it, man. I love everything that we're doing here.
Me too, brother. Me too. What you been up to, brother?
Man, you see me every day. How do you not know what I'm up to?
Man, you know what? This guy has been super happy lately, and I am loving it. We're motivated. We've got a lot of folks on our schedule. We've had a lot of great podcasts come out, and I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, definitely, man. We've been doing a great job. You've been doing a great job of booking these guests. So
You heard that, right?
Bravo. Well, without further ado, you want to do an intro?
Yes, absolutely. So today we have Dr. Hall coming to us, who is no stranger of understanding military culture. She has been on my LinkedIn feed quite often, and I've seen her name around and about. And we were put together by Miss Myrna Trevino. We have an event coming up here within the Houston area called Rally Point, and I was really eager to get her on to figure out more about CMA and how veterans can get involved and what ways they help. So please welcome. And Miss Hall, what would you say is something that not everyone knows about you?
Whew. Wow, that is a tough one. You gotta start out a little easier than that. Don't you know I put my whole life story out there on social
Yeah,
media?
you do. But I will, right before we started recording, you did say that your father used to work here in Houston. I didn't know that.
Well, see, there you go. But most people would know Dr. Stephen Hall worked with Mayor Sylvester Turner and our relationship there. So we love the city of Houston. We truly love it so much. But actually, both my father and I left to go to DC for a year to work for the Department of State. So now we are back in the great state of Texas, which is a blessing. But San Antonio, not Houston, though. Again, our hearts are still in Houston.
Yes,
So
that's amazing. So you
yeah.
did mention your father. Can you tell us a little bit about your prior to service life? What brought you into the military? You did mention that you have a long military family tradition.
I do. So my father, he is, and again, it's kind of one of those, most people know this about him, but he makes me do things. He is still the boss of me to this day. There's no man right now on the planet that compares to my daddy. So he is my best friend. He is, at his age, there's still not a man that I've ever met that can keep up with him and that understands me. So him and mom both served in the Air Force, and which led to myself wanting to serve, as well as both of my brothers. I like to tease them that I chose to serve prior to September 11th.
Mm-hmm.
And they like to tease back that that's because I'm older. So it's true, right? But dad did recruit me, and he did make gold that year in '99, and was also Gold Star recruiter. So I like to put that in there. Basic training was fun. When I told them that my recruiter spanked me, lied to me, did all these terrible things. Yeah.
All
like
true facts.
like literally, he was your recruiter.
He was literally my recruiter.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yep. Yep. He said, baby girl, go supply, because my best friend that went supply as a logistician was able to get his degree in 4 years. I grew up for the most part in Japan, and mom had gotten out of the Air Force, and aunts, uncles, grandparents, everyone served. Both grandpas, Vietnam veterans, 2 great uncles, Vietnam veterans. So service is in the heart of each of my family members. And even as we transitioned, and I know we'll get into that, but each of us truly cares about serving our great nation. And despite the flaws that we have, despite what people may see and the negativity when they turn on the news, we still want to make sure that that next generation understands service, and we still need a military, right? So the inherent danger of all of us not showcasing and sharing and highlighting the positivity that stems from service, the inherent danger is not having a future force.
And that's right.
Wow.
And I know
in
it's
the
so
show.
we're going out
Deep.
with a bang.
I'm throwing it in there, right? I'm just going deep.
I love it. I love it. I can hear your passion. So one of the things we love to hit on, because for Raul and I, we're post 9/11 vets, and of course 9/11 is a huge thing in our lives, and we feel it's important to continue to talk about it. Can you share your story with us a little bit? Where were you when 9/11 happened?
Yeah. And you're very right that it's very important that we continue to share those stories, and for a few years after, that was the thing that gave us all goosebumps, right? Every 9/11, it was, hey, where were you on this day? And if I flinch or jump, it's not PTSD kicking in, it's just these little phones falling out. All right, so make sure you guys calm yourselves, everything's good here. But September 11th, again, when I joined the Air Force, I was actually sharing this story with someone the other day, and I'm going to highlight this story because the reason why we need to continue sharing this message is we have so many, and even of the older generation, we have so many that still don't truly understand the sacrifices and the service, and then the blessings of where we are as a society today. And I feel that I kind of got to see, as my father would joke about me being a millennial, at 40 years old, but at least I got to see a little bit of each era and then where we are, and to kind of come into fruition. So what do I mean by that? I had a gentleman the other day say something about academics, and I've got an MPA with an emphasis in government and policy from Grand Canyon University, and then I have a doctorate in business administration from Trident University. I don't care what school it is. What I do care is about my educational journey and how I got to that point, because someone made the statement the other day of, well, she doesn't have a real doctorate. and that's okay. And that's okay. That doesn't, I have thick skin. I don't get offended. But the issues that stem from that is I'm a professor at a real university, right? So when we start to look at where I teach, where I write curriculum, they might be offended at the fact that someone wanted to make that statement. And the truth is my family believed in service so much. Again, I grew up in Japan. I homeschooled because every blonde growing up in Japan in the 90s modeled. So I got to be this cool hipster model in Japan till I got to the United States, and they're like, oh, you're 5 foot nothing, you're short, you can't model. And so, all joking aside, when I looked at what I wanted to do with that next step, and obviously it was, I'm going to raise my right hand, serve, defend, and protect. I was 17. I graduated high school early, and I actually graduated basic military training at Lackland Air Force Base before my class ever even graduated high school. And then I graduated my technical training before my class graduated high school. And then I went back that summer to do the internship with my recruiter, who made me work very hard. But
the name.
Yeah, what was his name? But then I got to my first base, and it was Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. And I was so excited about being a logistician and getting in. And my first job, I had a government credit card, and I got to shop. Not kidding. Every Friday, I got to deliver office supplies to all the technical students, their units. And I thought my job was the greatest job on the planet. You can imagine a young 17-year-old in Cali, government credit card, gets to buy stuff for the troops. Had the backpack, got my school approved. I said, hey, right away, day one, I told my supervisor I want to start school. He said, well, have you finished your career development courses? Not the point, not the question I asked. I asked, can I start school? If I fall behind in any of my other training, then I'll stop taking the classes. And he thought, well, here's a hard charger, and she's not going to take no for an answer. So it was actually nice because I was one of the first airmen to be able to kind of push that needle forward to say, look, we can do both. We don't need to be pigeonholed for
Mhm.
6 months to a year in our careers just because we don't have that next level of training. So long story short, I've got the backpack, I've got the Abercrombie jeans, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to the local community college in Cali, and September 11th happens a year later. And so we were not allowed when September 11th happened. The parentals were on the East Coast. I get the call there in Pennsylvania saying, have you turned on the news? I'm in Cali, obviously still sleeping. I think they're crazy. Turn it on. Then the recall starts and we're all told to stay in our dorms. We had to actually stay. We ended up all having to become overnight, where in a sense we're all security forces, where we're making sure that we can all be there to guard. Vandenberg Air Force Base is not a gated base, and it's now Space Force today.
Wow.
So pretty cool. But back then, we actually had people that started protesting the installation, and it was intense because here you are. It's not Vietnam era. We think we've come so far as a society, and there I am. September 11th happens, and a couple days later, and it was miles to the nearest town when you look up where Lompoc is, and you've got people coming in and protesting. So long story short, we weren't allowed off base for 2 weeks. By the time we were able to go back to school, I like to think that I've grown since
Mm.
18, 19, 20-year-old me. Probably not. Some would argue and say no, but I had bad attitude back then. And I didn't take no for an answer. And I go into school, I had my work, and I said, here's what I was able to do. We don't have online platforms back then.
Right.
And they actually told me, we won't accept that work. You weren't here, you missed. And I was so frustrated, and there was nothing that they would do. I'm like, are you kidding? Do you not see the news? Do you not? But there was no support for our military community, especially when it came to the educational realm, which again, you look at where we are today with the College Council of Military Educators and how all these schools are coming together to make sure that we have pathways for academia. So I took withdrawals. I gave them a huge, nice FU, peace out, whatever you want to say, and walked out the doors because I wasn't about to go to school with a bunch of people that didn't understand or support our military community.
Yeah, I mean that's a big shock to hear that with all that's going on, no consideration that your military background or what was going on within the world
Yeah,
to say, yeah, you can't even. No, we're not going to take that. Like,
yeah,
you have no understanding of my life or what's going on, do you?
yeah. Well, and then you think, okay, well here's a young airman living in the dorms, and what happens when you take withdrawals? You've got to pay back those classes.
Mm.
So, like a good young airman with parentals serving in the military, I called home and said, I'm going to need some money because I just took W's for my classes. But and there weren't social media platforms to stand out. There weren't. So I became dorm president of the airman dorms and started doing things in regard to education, finance, employment. I worked with the local recruiters at Vandenberg Air Force Base because I saw how my father was treated as a recruiter. And I was one of the first enlisted individuals, especially as an airman, to win an award from, it's the Recruiting Salutes Award. And that was to showcase that, hey, she supported us. The joke was I let all the new recruits come through my room to see what a dorm room looked like. They walked through, they came back out unscathed. But they always teased me about things like that. And today is no different, that had started that journey of that nonprofit journey, right? And that was why it started back when I was a young 17-year-old airman, to what I'm able to do now. But academics is a huge deal to me. And again, you look at where we were on September 11th, and then you look at, I was on a deployment in Iraq doing Liberty University videotape, to University of Phoenix, realizing, their platform, you couldn't get a hold of anybody back in the day, when online education first started, to where now, all three of my brothers and I, we have doctorates, we teach at credible universities, we help write curriculum, and it's because we want to showcase, even with the enlisted force, that we can do it too. We can overcome. But I didn't get to go to Harvard or Yale, so I have a fake doctorate, right?
Did was education always important to you and your family prior to the military?
Yes, it was. And my father has a very humbling story, but being in Japan, it really was. You're growing up in another country, and I help out a lot with DEI efforts, and people always ask me why, because at first glance or first blush they'd be like, oh, what's the white girl doing? And my grandmother didn't speak English till she was 19. She's French. My grandfather was in the Navy, so she got her Navy boy, and she learned how to speak English because of him, but then was a service member immediately, right? Here she is as a military spouse now, with her service member, traveling all over the globe. And so that taught me a lot, which is why my name is Chaunté. Je m'appelle Chaunté. And then growing up in Japan, the first time I experienced, I was the only white person at most events, right? I was the only one showing up, blonde hair, blue eyed. I wasn't the norm. I was picked on with the schools, some of the schooling system off base, to which led my mom to homeschooling me. And I'm not socially awkward at all. Totally normal.
Totally normal.
Totally normal. Been divorced twice, have 2 kids, single mom, 2 dogs, 2 birds. Totally normal.
Two 2 sets of questions. Got it.
There you go.
Careers.
Um, but at the end of the day, I think that taught me so much as a military dependent. And I always tease my dad. I was 8 years old when I'm pulled from an amazing school that I loved and all my friends, and touted off to Japan. I wasn't asked if I wanted to go. And so I always tease him from the dependent aspect, but that's what caused my family to be even stronger together, and forced us to. And then I was 14. Dad ended up being a recruiter in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. And for the first time in my life, I witnessed real racism. And not to say what I went through wasn't real, but in the United States, it was, this is America. This is, for me as a 14-year-old kid, it was a shock. I remember going home telling my parents, kids are talking about what other kids are wearing. There's whites on one side, there's blacks on another. It didn't make any sense to me. And again, what led to where my father just told me, he's like, that's why you always continue your education, and my mom and dad were very strong, tough parents. It was that tough love, but it was never negate your health. The things that I can own, and what I tell women all the time is, what I put in my body is what it's my choice. And then my level of academics and what comes out of my mouth will either draw you towards me or draw you away from me. And as long as I'm sharing statistics and facts, you can't knock what I'm saying, because it's a statistic, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I don't have opinions. I got them.
Right, but it's important to share the facts that we know with others, and then your perspective as well. So it's like validating to what it is we're trying to reach. We do the same thing in our show often, just to say, you can think what you might, but the statistics show that they're real. And then it's like, what do we do with that information is most important. So, as a woman serving in the military, seeking further education, do you think that kind of drew you to where you are now?
100%. I I had multiple deployments.
Mm. So let me
And
ask, how long total did you serve? How many years?
what almost 15, like right at the
Wow.
cusp to where, yeah. Yeah. Another question, another question, another
Yeah.
question, right? This podcast isn't long enough.
Oh, no, no. I just think it's important to give like a time lapse. So you come in right before 9/11, and then you're serving 15 years. I mean, Raul did 10, I did 13-ish, and it's like everybody asks why. And you're like, hey, it's just the way it is. A lot of us don't make the entire 20. It's just the way it is.
Well, right. And then, I mean, gosh, I would even argue now benefits have changed so much, right? That
Mm,
what we definitely have a retention problem right now with our military force, but honestly, and people hear me say this a lot, and that's not an opinion. We've got a recruitment problem.
yeah.
We've got a retention problem because Amazon is so cool. And I love them. They just sponsored my nonprofit. So huge shout out. But they will work you to the grind. They don't care that you have medical appointments or you need to go to the VA or you've got, children that need to do, like, are you working? Are you not working? And I pick on Amazon, but that's any civilian company, as both of you know. And so we've got this retention problem because people think, oh, my military recruiter lied to me when actually your military recruiter just told you what jobs were out there. Like those are the jobs are the jobs are the jobs. That's not a lie. There's only so many jobs in the military. And then we get into those jobs and those jobs change. But now retention we're sucking at because all these other recruiters are hip and cool. And they're like, you could do this and like you could do that. And like, oh my gosh, we'd like love you in our company. And we're immediately zeroed in, or we see that salary and we think, that's what I'm worth. But again, you don't know how your lifestyle is going to change to make that income. So then we fail at reintegration. And I call it the 3 R's: recruitment, retention, and reintegration. And they're cyclical. So we negate one of them. So now our children are at home and they see the Wounded Warrior commercial, which thank you for coming out. We've got the Wounded Warrior program, and so much goodness comes from that. But what negativity comes from that as well?
Mhm. Mhm.
I would say just as much, because what are our children seeing now? Oh, well, mommy came back. We knew she was in Iraq and she's a little crazy. My kids will joke sometimes about it. They're like, oh, mommy, are you reliving some crazy day? And they're teasing me because they know what success looks like, but it's
Mm.
striving. It's a choice to wake up every day and show them and pave the way for them. So if we're not successfully reintegrating into a culture that we already think we're a part of, which we are not, I don't care how many years, whether we served less than 4 or 30 years. There's a culture that from day one is ingrained into our hearts, our minds, our souls. And it's that brotherhood, that sisterhood, that immediate connection that we have. Like we just met today, but we're family,
Mm.
right? Because it's that service, and we know that. Tonight, if you hear something on this podcast that triggers you, and you're like, I'm going to reach out to Tay and make sure she's okay. We have that ear to be listening to each other, to take care of each other, and I think it's important, and that's why these podcasts are impactful. That's why we might see redundancy in this space, and people might complain or think, oh, they're doing what I do. No, you're never going to reach everyone, right?
We've said that so many times too, and I love the track that we're on because we firmly believe in, we're not a great platform for recruitment, right? I mean,
Yeah,
talking about our particular podcast, but we know that there are folks that watch, and one of the things I say is the skills that you learn in the military really set you up for success because of the hardships that they push you through, that those sets of extremes, right? How do you get better at lifting weights? You push yourself, and that's most things in the military, is that mindset. So let me ask, what type of skills, or where did you see yourself being pushed from the military that has really set you up for that success post military?
Yeah, so I wore a lot of hats. One of my very dear friends now, on my last deployment to the Iraqi border, we were one of the first Air Force units. It was a combat logistics support squadron that was getting ready to, I was in education and training. So yes, it was a combat logistics support squadron. I was a logistician, but I was running education and training. And I like to preface it that way because when a military service member is like, oh, I can do anything. Yes, yes, we know you can, but you can't say that. So what were you doing? But being in charge of education and training and watching the tracks, whether it was the mechanic, whether it was the jet engine, fuel, it didn't matter what it was. I had to make sure that they were on track and on par with their level of education. I get the call, it was 9:26, that said, hey, tomorrow you're taking so-and-so's place. We're the first Air Force unit to deploy with the Army as combat logistics lifesavers. I was like, get out of here. I'm important, right? I'm running education and training. Well, no, tomorrow you're leaving for Fort Carson to train in the snow for a month before you go to the desert sand. Well, all right there, Army, right? Good job.
Army logic.
Yeah, it makes sense. It made sense right here.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. So there I was again, logistician, government credit card, worked in a warehouse for a while, education and training, now in NCO and in Fort Carson snow, trying to learn how to shoot weapons with some civilian Army guy telling me I smelled good, right? I was wearing Victoria's Secret's pink perfume, I'll never forget. And I'm like, can you stop sniffing me and just tell me if I'm holding my gun right?
Yeah, man.
So I'm going somewhere with this. The one command sergeant major came to me and he said, hey, I really need you to go get your hair colored. And I'm blonde. I've always been like, I'm a blonde. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, no, I'm gonna need you to go to a salon and he goes, I'm worried about you. It's just, can you go dye your hair this weekend brown? I was like, interesting, but all right, I'm down with that, right? Sure, I'll go change my hair. I don't care. I'm nervous. I get, they know the environment, the lay of the land. Dyed my hair brown, lasted a couple weeks before it turned orange. That was fun. But there you are, combat logistics lifesaver, learning how to do IVs on a dirty warehouse floor. We get over there, we do a couple missions, and then we're at Camp Virginia on the Iraqi border, Kuwait, and our mission was canceled, and we were forward deploying to Camp Arif John. And I mean, I had a young troop. He's getting ready to have his first baby, right? And our mission's canceled. Well, can you send airmen home? They're like, no, we can't send airmen home. So it's a lot of those things that you're trying to overcome of questioning the whys. And then during this time, my father's retiring from the military, and I'm deployed, my brother's deployed, and my other brother's in Germany. So now it's the attitude, right? Back to that 19-year-old attitude where F this, I'm out. This is not okay. This is my family here. And now we're here just going through big containers in Arif John. And went through a lot on that deployment. Loved my Navy CVs who really took care of me. But we were not prepared. And I try to educate even women veterans on this is how do you showcase the next generation of strength and resilience and adaptability? And it's a choice. It's a choice to wake up and to continue to want to be strong, to continue to want to give back. And so I've got the crazy stories, but I've also got the stories of resiliency and again, that adaptability and that don't mess with me. The strength that came from that was, no, I'm going to find a way to rise and overcome with my 5'3" frame, 100 pounds, like you're not going to mess with me. I'm going to keep moving forward. And I think that message should be stronger than, again, those negative messages, because what I would say is the civilian sector has just as much negativity, if not more, And I would say, if not more. Why? Because our military community is less than 1% of our nation. So if you're going to pick on us, I'm going to come back at you full throttle and look at your own organization and put it into question. We are the most diverse workforce on the planet. And if I had an issue and something happened, I did have someone that I could go to. Did things happen? Did I have someone that I could go to? Yes. And I think that's crucial, right? So that message fueled me. Those experiences fueled me. And when I got back, it was 2007 from that deployment, and my unit was closing up shop. Now they're closing. They're like, oh, we're gonna move everyone back to California. I didn't want to go to California. So I was like, you know what? I'm done. At this point, I had, again, from the community colleges to online Liberty University, trying to teach myself math, which I failed miserably at, to trying to do Digital Angel back in the day, to now here I am 8 years in, no degree. What am I going to do? And so I made the choice to get out. Also met a boy during that time, knew him for a couple months, got married, dad cried, begged me not to. That lasted a month. That didn't work out. Don't make decisions when you're stressed, right? At the end of the day, don't meet random people and think your life's going to be better because you're stressed. So long story short, because of that medical experience, I actually joined the reserve. So I was wise enough to leave active duty, and the very next day I was a reservist. So no lapse in time, and I became a medic. So I was able to cross train into medical, and you won't find that on my LinkedIn account. So there's a lot of people who have no idea that I was a medic and finished an LVN course, was going the direction of nursing, and then, you know, when I got out into 2014, by that time, I'd made a lot of other different life decisions, and I did not want to be a nurse. But when I did get out and made that decision, it was because I had babies, and I was getting ready to become an MSC officer, and my commander called me in and said, hey, I want you to be my MSC. You know how I feel about you, but you've got a 4-month-old and an 18-month-old. What do you want to do? And she said, we're going to Africa this year. I need you there if you were to stay in. So I made the decision to get out at that time. And that day that I made that decision, the next day, I'll tell you what, not having TRICARE benefits was the first time in my life that I did not have TRICARE.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I get, yeah, because your dad and your service. Yeah, Jesus.
Yeah. Yep. So life comes at you fast. And
It does. So as you transition out, what kind of difficulties did you run into, and how do we help our service members that are getting out now?
yeah, so again, going back to always making sure that it's statistics and facts and weighing your options. The story that I just shared, and though about me, because I know we're supposed to do that on podcasts, what I would hope people would gather from the quick, whether it's the jokes, it's the story, it's the seriousness, it's war, it's young woman, it's that we only have certain pathways that we can pursue, that are presented in front of us. And are we energized to be on those pathways? We can give you all the tools, all the resources, everything that you need. But if you don't have the energy to pursue it, if you don't have the energy to be successful, and so for me, from a personal standpoint, had I not had an amazing family support structure, had I not had my people that understood me, had I not had my people that spoke my language, I would not be where I am today. Hands down, I would not be. And so, yes, you know, when you see people and they're like, I've arrived. No, I'm still daily going through the grind. I have 4 jobs. If you ask anybody some of the things that I do, and it's not a one and done. It's not a Amazon hired you, you're going to be great. No, there's still a process, right? There's still a missing that military installation. Your brothers, your sisters that you might have fought with. I always think it's funny when I had that one person that hated me on a deployment, and I would just look at them and I'm like, we'll be best friends by the time this is over. Yeah. And you know what? All you need is one little dirty secret on someone,
Changes everything.
You got them for life, right? You got them for life. But so 2000, I got out of active duty 2008, became a medic. 2009, I was in New Braunfels, San Antonio, Texas. Wanted to run a gym, and I'll briefly share this really quick. I launched my gym, realized, we want to work for ourselves. I had the personal training. Remember, I had no degree yet, but I had all the certifications and licensures, and so opened up my own gym. And I told my dad, I'm going to get a bachelor's in kinesiology because I love fitness. And my dad was like, no, the F you aren't. You're going to get a degree in business because you just opened a business and you need to have a business mindset and understand what's going on. So great advice. Finished a bachelor's in business. He was spot on. That bachelor's in business allowed me to, when I realized I didn't want to sell chicken and vegetables, and open a door at 4:30 in the morning and close the doors at 10 o'clock at night as a single woman, right? Young woman at the time, answering to every single person who's coming through that door. Because you think you don't have a boss, yet you've got like how many bosses now? So sold it, became a director at the YMCA. GI Bill came out and said, hey, you can now get a master's degree with your GI Bill online. I thought, awesome. And I told Dad I was a director at the YMCA, Christian organization. And moms just don't negate mom. Mom's amazing. But by this time I had had a baby, and mom quit work and is like loving on the baby. You could continue in your career, Tay. And I say that's the caveat, because again, I'm not doing this on my own, right? It is a support structure. It's when people are like, how do you do it all? I don't, right? We are a well-oiled team, right? We're that machine, but we're coming together, operating more like a team, and that makes us a stronger family. So director at the YMCA, I'm going to get a master's in Christian studies. Again, Dad drops the F-bomb. We're out there, barbecue, Texas barbecue, drinking a beer. He's like, why would you do that? You already go to church. You're already a Sunday school teacher. What's that master's in Christian studies going to get you? Okay. He's like, you're going to get an MPA with an emphasis in government policy. I thought, like for a minute, I want to go back to that little girl. Like, why would I do that, Dad? I don't, what? But I'll tell you what, through my journey and an unfortunate where I became a single mom. My kids were 4 and 6 at the time, and becoming a single mom. Dad battled cancer back to back. Thank God for the city of Houston, and being there at the time. But he's going through battling cancer. My ex finally gets his 100%, decides to bounce. Thank God for his first ex-wife, who called me and said, what's going on? And I said, he got his 100%. She goes, okay, all he wants is his money. So meet him in mediation, get the kids' last names changed, make sure that, he got his 100%. He doesn't want to be around them. He doesn't see his first daughter. A lot of stuff that you don't know, and then you find out when the other person leaves. But long story short, my kids and I had a name change party. He signed everything over. But overnight, my financial world was rocked. So I'm going to backtrack now, because this was 2017 when he decided to leave us. 2011, I told my dad, because I was working for Grace After Fire, huge shout out to them. I was working for the YMCA. I've always had my hand in a little bit of everything. And what I always share with service members is, don't negate those times when we were voluntold, right? Don't forget that. You see, what makes us better than everybody else? No, I'm just kidding. But what makes us strong, resilient while we're wearing the uniform? What makes the civilian community love us? Because we volunteer, because we support, community efforts, because we are lifelong learners, because we stand up straight and we're groomed, and we come in and we're ready to take charge. We're ready to take on whatever you throw at us. The beautiful aspects of a veteran. Don't negate it, So I've always been volunteering, but I told my father, Texas is dumping millions into mental health. They're forming these peer-to-peer groups. What is that? Like, what's the outcome? We're not doing anything with that. And I'm like, we need to do something. So my dad's like, all right, millennial, If we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And if we're going to focus on facts, on statistics. Dad was actually in his doctorates at the time, and I won't bore you with his dissertation, but from his dissertation stemmed my dissertation, and we co-authored a multidisciplinary curriculum in 2011 together that focuses on the Centurion Military Alliance pillars of educational attainment, financial literacy, and vocational proficiency. And if you imagine the U.S. Olympic rings, the three circles, where those pillars intersect is what's called positionality. If you think back to the long drawn out my life story of what I'm sharing with you, now think about how I was talking about academics or financial or employment. Those three pillars, education. If I'm talking about education, I'm talking about a JOB. I'm talking about vocational proficiency. Is my branding associated? Can I articulate my level of education into that? Will that help with a position description? Will it help with my resume? And if I'm talking about needing a JOB, talking about needing financial stability, right? I'm talking about needing a paycheck, hopefully leading to financial literacy. I like to tell people before TSP ever got to me, the military star card got to me, right? And they increased my limit every Christmas, baby, right?
Mhm.
I thought it was God's gift to me. I'm like, oh, look, Jesus is giving me extra money so I can buy more stuff for people. Not the case.
Yeah, well, I've had my run-ins with the star card.
Oh, me too. Me too. Yeah. Me
See?
too.
So here's another point, though. Think about those three pillars and where they intersect, what's called positionality. Where are we today in a mix from education, finance, and vocation? And knowing that they're not only cyclical, and people will do this, like, oh, come to my financial literacy class. Why even call it that? Because the person who's feeling guilty, they're like, there's no help for me. I'm in debt over my eyeballs. And what we teach in the assessment, what the assessment that I created, data housed at University of the Incarnate Word, what my assessment actually showcases is what migration patterns. So negative statistics towards migration patterns due to whether it's a lack of education, financial just hurting, or the job. So two of my pet peeves is when people come in and they go, what are you passionate about? Who cares, right? And I'm not trying to be mean, but who cares what you're passionate about? I need to know right now, what's your level of education? Where are you at financially? And when I have individuals, these service members take this assessment, now I can intrusively advise them. And I love that, right? Because whether it's college counselors, whether it's our transition assistance program counselors, a counselor is a counselor, they sit down with you, what do you want to do? Or bias and judgment, oh, you're a colonel, you'll be just fine.
Oh, man, I've heard that.
What do you mean they'll be just fine, right? Chief Master Sergeant, an E9, a Command Sergeant Major. What do you mean they'll be just fine? You don't know their financial situation. And so we do this bias against each other, and then, or worse, we allow the counselors to ask this question of what do you want to do? And then the person throws up all over you. Like, no one's got time for that. No. What's your current level of education? Did you find a job? Did you find a position description on the Bureau of Labor Statistics or LinkedIn, or show me, prove it to me? Do you meet the metrics there? Do you even want to live in that area? Financially, can you afford that salary? Where are you at? And then, can you even get through an interview? Do you have a resume? Do you have, what's your branding look like? I mean, I interview people and they break out like it's splotches, right? Because they're so nervous.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we don't take those things into consideration though. So what you can track from that is you can say, wow, see, I didn't ask them what they were passionate about. And I love all people like Jesus tells me to, but I didn't ask them what they're passionate about because remember, I was passionate about a gym. And then I realized I don't care what people eat anymore. Dear God, right? Like, look at the way you want to look, eat that cupcake. I don't want to work for you anymore. Do I still care about my fitness? 100%. But then, no, I'm over it, right? But I thought I was so passionate about, what I was passionate about was the military community. And when we do PT together and the camaraderie and the sport and the only thing that helps you learn that about yourself is time. and that's it. So to me, the crux of what we need as service members, and honestly, I'm gonna be real, COVID showed us. I trained over 100 United Airline pilots during COVID that were furloughed. I train now college students. Same thing. What is your greatest need? So back to when my ex left, and the reason why I threw that in there is because overnight I miss volunteer. Okay, I won't. No one takes a paycheck from CMA. I've created a curriculum that the DoD supports, and we're on every major military installation. Getting ready to have Fort Bliss, over 6,000 troops here in May, doing phenomenal stuff. But that's volunteer. So what did I do during the time that I was married? And best time of my life, I got to be a mom. Like my favorite title is being a mom,
Mm.
and I had that time with my kids. But when it came to, okay, what are you going to do now? I had a master's degree. I was working on a doctorate, not by choice. I was forced into that by a dear friend who said, "You're going to get this," and I was like, "No, I'm not." She's like, "Yes, you are. Here's why." And so I started working on a doctorate. 2019, I was able to do a lot of business development for different organizations and companies because of the relationships that I had established. And then by 2020, the Department of State Med Bureau called me, and I went to DC and ran the largest contract with the Department of State Med Bureau. And what's interesting and why I share that is because was that the path that I saw myself on? Remember, I got out of the military. Why? Babies. And then here I find myself having to go to DC for a year, coming home on weekends. But I had to. Financially, I had to go work and do that. And so again, I share that because those pillars are constantly shifting and changing. And we have to be so self-aware to know, okay, look at what's happening in industry right now when it comes to technology. Look at the Twitter layoffs, the Amazon, and we have to be ahead of it. As to me, as veterans, what are we good at? Let's be ahead of the power curve and go, okay, how can we shift change now? Because this isn't a one and done. And what can be frustrating is sometimes the military community thinks, oh, they landed this great job, they're good. No, that one job doesn't mean that they're okay, because we don't know, again, what's going on mentally with their hours, their family, we can go on and on. So Centurion Military Alliance prides itself on focusing on those applicable statistics and facts with education, finance, and vocation, but being on a foundation of holistic health, well-being, and resiliency. And why? Give me a story, share it with me, a problem of a service member, and let me not prove it to you that it's not directly correlated to whether it's a lack of education, whether it's financial hurting, or it's because they didn't have the bandwidth to go get a job to continue giving back. Because we even have those that are like, financially, I'm 100%, I don't need a job, right? But then they find themselves in a room alone, not giving back to their community, not continuing what's embedded in our hearts. Again, we've all got those jackasses in every industry, but for the most part, our military community is what? We want to serve. We want to find ways to serve.
I think we talk about that a lot too. Well, one of the things I hear you saying is we got to, like, for me, this podcasting is a passion of mine, and serving veterans, it is a passion of mine.
Mm-hmm.
But the how I got here was I worked at a warehouse. I put in the crappy hours, and then slowly worked my way out of that. Got better financial literacy. Started really taking care of my finances. Got more in touch with my family. Setting up that system to where now I can do this. What do you see?
No, I agree 100%. Like with everything she was saying, as far as like adjusting, adapting, and things like that. We started the apparel line. COVID hit. People weren't buying apparel, so we went
Yeah.
podcasting. So podcasting was how we adjusted, and everything that you said made sense. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So why don't
But
you tell us a little bit about the event that's coming up next week on?
yeah, but hold on, I got to piggyback real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
I got to share this because think about, because you said passion. So I would hate for anyone to walk away and think, oh, she doesn't care about passion. 100% care about what we're passionate about in our hearts. But think about the journey that you just shared, and now I'll go one step further. I think you're passionate about the podcast, because of what stems from it, right? Of serving people. It's more so what stems from the podcast and being able to still reach back into your community, to talk to your brothers and sisters in uniform, that have worn the uniform, and to give back. I would say that's more the passion than, oh, I got to launch this podcast and this, because if the podcast ended tomorrow, you'll still continue to find ways to serve and give back. And so your passion is again, it's that service, it's that heart that you keep moving forward and you keep addressing what the need is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
100%. Yep.
So that's why when I say that question is different, because your passion should be for that next generation. Your passion should be for humanity. You should be, and I said this during COVID, if you can't look outside your window and care about another person, what are you doing? There's a church on every corner. What was the help during that time? Who was reaching out and making sure people were okay? And so I saw it with our veteran community. So I think that's amazing. And I love speaking engagements. You're like, no shit, Chaunté, you don't shut up, right?
No,
No.
I think this has been great to be able to hear more of the nuances behind why CMA has been so successful, what they're doing now, because it definitely has a lot to do with the leader in charge, right? And that's most organizations. Any organization can be turned around depending on the leader in charge. And we had a discussion about that before we jumped on. And for me, that's why I love this platform. I can bring on partners at other organizations to hear why this organization is so important to them, and especially hearing the statistics behind it. I think it's really fascinating. So tell us about what's going on next week for you on May the 4th.
Yeah, so on May the 4th, very excited about this event, Centurion Military Alliance. It's going to be at Sonopar, so huge shout out to them for giving us the space. But Houston, as we know, is the second largest veteran community in our nation. And Mayor Sylvester Turner and my father, Dr. Stephen Hall, would always joke that it's only second to first being LA, because LA actually has a military installation. So really we get props to we're kind of number one here in the city of Houston. But there are so many veterans, there's so many organizations out there that are looking to hire from our military population. And so Centurion Military Alliance is coming on to make sure that day one, May 4th, we preface the service members, the military, the spouses, the dependents. Even if they have children, we always encourage them, bring your families. I think this is great for our kids to hear. My kids are 9 and 10, and they can give you an elevator pitch. I think it's important, right? Never know when those little guys got to go to work, right? Get out there and mow the lawn.
Yeah, go knock on some doors.
Exactly. Go door to door. Yeah, that's right. My son swears he can paint action figures and sell them.
Sweet.
Yeah, I always thought it was so cool. And then it ends up being COVID. And next thing you know, I'm dressed up in a Captain Marvel outfit and playing with kids. So parenthood will humble you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, truth,
It will.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to know what's a way that our listeners or those watching can get in touch with you and follow along with you. What's your story? What you got going on?
Yeah. So cmawarrior.org, the events are on there. Again, May 4th for the city of Houston, to be able to make sure that our transitioning military population, our veterans, our spouses, our caregivers, our dependents are prepared to navigate the system, whether it's with, hey, I want to start school, I want to enroll in school, or I want to find out new educational pathways, or it's financial resources, or getting back to, hey, nope, we just need JOBs. The nice thing about having this the day before the May 5th event, the huge employer rally point event that's going to be taking place, is that they'll hone in on their elevator pitch, they'll get resume review, they'll get the interview practice and prep on May 4th to make sure that they are fully prepared and ready to go on May 5th. So cmawarrior.org to register for the event. Obviously, everything is free. Centurion Military Alliance is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. None of the staff member for CMA are paid. All of us have day jobs. I am the vice president of a government contracting company, Nama'u Technological and Industrial, NTI. Vice President Strategic Partnerships there. I'm a professor at University of the Incarnate Word. I am a strategy consultant for Port San Antonio, which is doing amazing things and just launched a huge new phenomenal facility that they're going to be building to bring jobs to the city of San Antonio. And and then I help out with the Airman Heritage Group with Lackland Air Force Base. And then my favorite title, mom, right? So I share that because everyone with the Centurion Military Alliance team is working, is hustling, is trying to give back to be able to support our local communities and then beyond. And then if any of the employers actually hear this podcast, May 16th through 18th, we've got a huge event happening at Fort Bliss. Why do we care about Fort Bliss, City of Houston? Well, they will tell you, because where does a majority of those from Fort Bliss go to? City of Houston or City of San Antonio.
Amazing.
So, yeah, so we've got 6,000 troops in transition that will be attending the Centurion Military Alliance event May 16th through 18th at Fort Bliss.
And that's amazing. And I really want to say thank you. We appreciate your time and recognize you for all you're doing. You know, like I said, I've seen you on socials here and there, but being able to take the time to dig into your story has made us more of a fan of you. So get out there and keep shining, and we'll find ways to stay connected. My final question to you, of course, Charlie Mike means continue mission. So what does Charlie Mike mean to you?
Means awaken the warrior within. You want to continue that mission? Awaken the warrior within. Don't let it die when we change the uniform. We got to continue, and the next generation deserves it. So thank you both from the bottom of my heart for what you do every single day, for bringing the community together, for showing the community that collaboration is key and we're stronger together. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's very humbly. We appreciate that. Don't hang off. We're gonna have Raul is gonna sign off, but I'd like to chat with you afterwards.
No, like William said, thank you for everything. Thank you for being on the show. You left me speechless most of it, and that's hard to do. So we appreciate it. And everybody tuning in, we just want to say thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the episode. And Charlie, Mike,